Hello and welcome to this webinar presented by the IFRS Foundation. I am Robert Swiatowski, Partnership Manager at Capacity Building at IFRS, and I'm your host today. First of all, some housekeeping. We encourage you to ask the questions in Zoom's Q&A window about today's topic, focusing on companies' preparation for assurance of sustainability disclosure. We might not be able to comment on all your questions today, and some might be outside the scope of today's teams, but rest assured, we will consider all of them in our educational efforts, including future webinars and communications going forward. We also have closed captioning enabled. You can turn it on in the Zoom. Live closed captioning won't be 100% accurate, but we hope it will help the accessibility of today's content. Another disclaimer, the information and topics discussed during this webinar do not constitute implementation guidance from the IFRS Foundation. All right, welcome to everyone to joining live from around the world, as well as those listening on demand. Here's a look at our registration. Over 3,300 people from around the world spanning sustainability officers, consultants in finance and reporting executives, as well as the accountancy profession and academia. Our topic for today's episode is the state of assurance for sustainability disclosures. And on this slide, you can see the overview of the topics we will discuss today. Our hope is that you come out of this webinar with a deeper understanding of how assurance and verification practices for sustainability disclosures are evolving, the specific challenges and considerations for preparers, and actionable insights on how to align your disclosures with the ISSB standards while building credibility and trust with stakeholders. The links to the resources will be added in the chat as we go along and sent to you in a follow-up email. We will also send out a copy of the slides. This webinar is being recorded and will be available on the IFRS Knowledge Hub website. Now, who will be the speakers today? To lead off the discussion in a moment, Veronika Pountcheva is a full-time member of the International Sustainability Standards Board, appointed in August 2022. She brings a unique combination of expertise in accounting, the development of assurance-ready ISSB standards, and the deep insights into sustainability practices from the perspective of preparers. Veronika has also held leadership roles in international organizations focused on advancing sustainability and diversity. And I want to welcome our guest speakers who will bring expertise from different perspectives, assurance and accounting professionals and companies. Today we are joined by Roberta Carvalho Mendes, an environmental engineer with over a decade of experience in corporate sustainability. As sustainability manager at Vale SA, she focuses on sustainability disclosure, driving connections between external demands and improved ESG performance. David Madon is the Director of Sustainability Policy and Regulatory Affairs at IFAC, where he leads global efforts on sustainability reporting, assurance, and ethics. He manages policy development and stakeholder engagement, drawing on his expertise in corporate reporting, investor protection, and financial markets. Tom Seidenstein is the chair of the International Auditing and Assurance Standards Board and the co-CEO of the International Foundation for Ethics and Audit. He has extensive experience in both the private sector and international standard setting, having previously held leadership roles at Fannie Mae and the IFRS Foundation. Thanks all for your contribution to this discussion today. And to start with, Veronika, could you kick things off by explaining how the ISSB standards have been designed with assurance in mind? Over to you, Veronika.
Well, thank you, Robert. And let me first say hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. And thanks for joining us. I would like to thank you on behalf of the ISSB for being part of that webinar and listening to us. And to your point, your question, Robert, indeed, assurance is fundamental to enhancing the credibility and reliability of IFRS S1 and S2 disclosures. And it's because it provides stakeholders, particularly investors, with confidence that sustainability-related financial information is accurate, and it's also supported by solid governance, risk management, and data collection processes. By ensuring that disclosures are relevant and faithfully represent the underlying sustainability risks and opportunities, assurance also strengthens trust and transparency, which are central to the ISSB mission. Let's be clear about one thing. The ISSB does not mandate assurance. The decision to require assurance lies with the individual jurisdictions. However, the ISSB standards are designed to ensure that sustainability-related financial disclosures are assurance-ready. What does it mean? The ISSB standards S1 and S2 have been designed with assurance in mind. And let me talk about 4 key aspects which are addressing how these standards facilitate assurance. The first aspect is the alignment with financial reporting. IFRS S1 and S2 mirror the structure of traditional financial reporting standards, making them familiar to preparers and auditors. They emphasize data consistency between sustainability and financial reporting, which simplifies integrating assurance processes and increases investor confidence. The second aspect is materiality. S1 uses the established IAASB definition of financial materiality, providing a very familiar concept for assurance providers. And as I mentioned before, the standard mandates that disclosure must be relevant and faithfully represent sustainability risks and opportunities. It also emphasizes the importance of transparency to facilitate independent assessment and minimize subjective judgment by assurance providers. The standard also highlights that the usefulness of sustainability-related financial information is enhanced if it is comparable, verifiable, timely, and understandable. The third aspect which I want to mention is verifiability. In the context of assurability, verifiability is crucial as it gives users confidence that the information is complete, it's neutral, and is accurate. And this is because verifiable information allows for corroboration, either of the information itself or the inputs used to derive it, making the disclosure auditable and suitable for assurance engagement. Both S1 and S2 are built around principles of transparency and comparability. Transparency ensures that information provided can be independently assessed for accuracy and completeness. It reduces also the subjective judgment required by assurance providers who need well-defined criteria to perform their assessments. Disclosures such as those related to governance, risk management, strategy, and metrics must be provided in such a way that they can be easily traced back to data sources, allowing for independent verification. And the fourth aspect which I want to mention is scenario analysis. While forward-looking data poses challenges for assurance, S2 offers detailed guidance for conducting and disclosing scenario analysis. And it's important to know that this guidance helps auditor assess the validity of assumptions and methodologies, adding credibility to the forward-looking disclosures. I hope that helped.
Yes, great. Thank you very much, Veronika, for these insights and setting up the discussion. I would like now to invite our panel to share their perspectives on the current landscape of sustainability assurance, the range of verification options available globally, and the challenges and practical tips for preparers. As a reminder to our audience, please share your questions in the Q&A panel, and after initial round of comments, we will take up your questions. Now, turning to David. David, could you share your insights on the current state of sustainability assurance and the various verification options available worldwide?
Yeah, thanks, Robert, and hello, everybody. Let me answer your question by first a quick thank you to the ISSB, which is a reporting standard setter, for really recognizing the need for third-party assurance and verification as part of high-quality disclosure. So really appreciate you guys doing this topic on this webinar. IFAC represents the accountancy profession globally, so I don't think it'll surprise anyone if we say that we believe sustainability information is not going to be as decision useful as financial information, without assurance. And that really means mandatory requirements for assurance. But it's not just what we believe as an accountancy profession, it's what investors believe as well. So a couple of years ago, PwC did a global study of over 200 investors, and 75% of them said that an independent, reasonable assurance opinion, and that's the same as what you get for financial audit, is what gives them confidence in sustainability reporting. And they also said over 70% of them said that that they want assurance, that company management has done what they've reported they've done, that the reporting is in line with a generally recognized reporting framework like S1 and S2, and they want the assurance of the report as a whole, not just subsets of what companies report. So in other words, sustainability assurance is about more than just verifying greenhouse gas metrics. So to understand where we are in terms of sustainability assurance to meet those needs, IFAC does a lot of research each year. We look at 1,400 of the largest stock exchange listed companies in the G20 countries, plus Singapore and Hong Kong. And so we find that while 98% of companies are reporting something, maybe it is only one greenhouse gas number, just under 70% of the reporting companies obtain assurance over some of what they report. So that's a big gap, 70% versus 98%. So to understand how much information companies get assured, we also wanted to break things down into the E, the S, and the G buckets. And 98% of the companies who obtain assurance did so over the greenhouse gas data. But that percentage slips to 76% for assurance over social disclosure and 61% for assurance for governance disclosures. So the bottom line is that the scope of what companies assure is nowhere near as complete as the scope of what they disclose. Another important point is who provides assurance. About 60% of companies who obtain assurance use accountancy firms. The other 40% is being done by engineers, consultants, or other types of professional service organizations with expertise in sustainability metrics. So in Europe, it's mainly accountants doing assurance. In Asia, the consultants are dominating. But our research shows that there are some meaningful differences between the scope of work and the level of assurance being provided by consultants versus accountants. And those differences over the long run really need to be eliminated. And that's why the ISSB's new sustainability assurance standard, Tom will talk about that next, ISSA 5000 is so important. The standard was specifically developed with the intention of being used by accountants as well as consultants so that we could have consistency to sustainability assurance and that this could become the global standard. So that's kind of the state of play in assurance today.
Perfect. Thank you, David, for this insights and this information and the current statistics and how the scope of assurance now is being covered. David, could you briefly outline what companies should address in assurance readiness exercise and explain the difference between limited and reasonable assurance?
Yeah, so the starting point for us at IFAC is the belief that we need connectivity in sustainability and financial reporting. And connectivity in reporting is to connected or combined financial audit and sustainability assurance engagements. So companies should view sustainability assurance as in the years ahead as evolving towards and looking more like financial reporting and building their data collection, their systems, their processes, their internal controls, which they already have in financial reporting and assurance, to stand up to reasonable assurance, just like in financial audits. So that's going to be a step change in the quality of information, and it's going to take time. So for example, companies need to address the challenges in data collection on sustainability information, including getting that relevant data throughout their value chain. And they also need to address areas of data validity, which can arise if they have imprecise policies or definitions or inconsistent practices across their organization, let alone what's going on in their value chain. So today, we find that 80% of sustainability assurance is limited in nature. So what does that mean? Limited assurance means evidence is being gathered by the assurance provider using procedures that are more limited as compared to a reasonable assurance engagement. And this is the important part. The goal is to determine whether anything has come to the assurance provider's attention to believe the information that's been reported is materially misstated. How is that different from reasonable assurance? So financial audit is reasonable assurance. Evidence is gathered to obtain a reasonable, but not an absolute level of confidence that the information is free from material misstatement. So who provides assurance, the scope of that assurance, the level of that assurance, limited versus reasonable, are determined by what companies decide to do and what regulators require as we move into this transition period from voluntary to mandatory assurance requirements. So we need consistency in these key elements, which is not the case that we find in our research today. So a final point here is that sustainability assurance, just like financial assurance, should have appropriate board director oversight. But we find only 22% of the companies in our research have officially designated oversight of sustainability assurance. So boards have an important role in assessing the maturity of a company's disclosures, financial or sustainability, in the context of what investors and other stakeholders need. And assurance practitioners are going to increase their focus on this governance factor as well as internal controls as part of the evidence gathering and assurance procedures that they do in the sustainability arena. So we need these changes in assurance if the quality and reliability of sustainability disclosure is to reach the same level as what companies provide for their financial reporting.
Perfect. Thank you, David. Yeah, thank you for bringing this very important difference and distinction between the different levels of assurance. Now, Tom, now turning to you on something to also David mentioned. Could you explain how the International Auditing and Assurance Standards Board developed the recently published International Standards on Sustainability Assurance, ISA 5000, and its significance for enhancing the credibility of sustainability disclosure?
Thank you, Robert. So first of all, welcome to everyone. Greetings from just outside Washington, D.C. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'll talk shortly about our global baseline standard for sustainability assurance, ISSA 5000, in a second. But I wanted to reiterate a couple of points. First of all, like David said, if you're going to build a trusted system of sustainability reporting, just like you have audit on the financial reporting side, you need assurance on the sustainability reporting side. And this webinar is a testament that how closely we are cooperating with the ISSB and other standard setters out there. So secondly, having a global baseline on assurance like 5000 will improve comparability for investors and other users of sustainability information. But I know there's preparers here on the phone too. It will reduce costs for preparers and facilitate capacity building within the assurance industry because you're going to one specific target out there. And third, I just wanted to calm some of the nervousness out there. And as David's statistics point out, assurance on sustainability matters or ESG reporting is not new. We at the IAASB have had frameworks for assurance with ISA 3000, which was a general framework, and a much more targeted greenhouse gas standard, ISA 3410, for some time. So we just passed ISSA 5000. It's been published. It's been supported by IOSCO in a similar way to the ISSB standards have been supported by IOSCO. But what is new? So the big thing is that 5000 really provides much more specificity of what you do in the circumstances of sustainability reporting. And it's prepared very much with the major reporting frameworks in mind, the ISSBs, ESRSs, GRI. And there's a few key design principles in it. First of all, it deals with all sustainability information. So it's the E, S, and G, which is unique relative to other global frameworks in the level of specificity that we deal with it. As I said, it works with all major reporting frameworks. So this includes the ones I said, and this is important in both traditional notions of materiality and double materiality. A topic that we've talked before, it deals with both limited and reasonable assurance. and the requirements are side by side. So you could see the difference in work efforts for both, but also you could see what it takes to progress up to a reasonable assurance opinion. And importantly, it's open to all qualified assurance practitioners committed to robust ethical and quality management standards. So that is really important. Capacity is an issue in the marketplace. This isn't just for the accounting industry. It's available to everyone, but on the proviso, you use high quality ethical and quality management standards. Now, a few things about the burdens or how we've tried to mitigate the burdens. Remember, as I said, assurance is not new. We've built off the existing platform and just enhanced it, so provided much more specificity. So this will enable existing firms in this space to build off existing practices and principles. And secondly, there's a high degree of scalability in the standard, so the requirements will differ if you're a very simple company relative to whether you're doing assurance on a very sophisticated company. So that gives you a little bit of the background on what ISSA 5000 is meant to accomplish. Also, we plan to support this standard. There's going to be stability in the system. We're not going to issue new standards, but we will be prepared to provide guidance on this standard going forward.
Perfect. Thank you, Tom. Yeah, and to continue what you just said, could you highlight the key differences between the assurance of financial statements and sustainability-related financial reports? And then let's, as an example, particularly focusing on greenhouse gas emissions verification.
Yeah, so really good question. So obviously the world of financial reporting and sustainability reporting differ in some key aspects. One is, on the financial reporting side, you have the benefit of a balance sheet. Everything has to add up, left side, right side. You're much more qualitative, forward-looking disclosures. So there's a real bigger emphasis on process, though it controls and assessing them going forward. The other big thing, I think, goes back to some of what David was talking about, particularly if you're a user and you're very used to audits. Most of the assurance on day one and for the near period will be limited assurance. And that's a different level of confidence that's being generated in the conclusion being expressed on a limited assurance relative to the opinion being expressed on a reasonable assurance opinion. The good thing, as I said, we've adopted a pretty robust approach to risk assessment, which is the core work of the assurance engagement. And we've adopted the approach that was in the greenhouse gas standard 3410 beforehand. I've seen some questions in the dialogue box, and I just wanted to touch on something about the estimations, and particularly on greenhouse gas, since you mentioned it. Particularly, we get a lot of questions about, will Scope 3 be assurable? Well, yes, it should be, but in many jurisdictions, it won't be upfront. But the other question that we get is, can you use proxies or industry averages for Scope 3 emissions? And the answer is that depends if the reporting framework allows you. Remember, we're assuring against a reporting framework. And the practitioner, the assurance practitioner, needs just to be satisfied that the proxies or the averages used are appropriate and aligned with that reported requirements. So if Scope 3 emissions have been reported in the prior period, then the practitioner will consider whether the basis for the proxies or averages used have changed since the prior period, and if any change is justified. If methods for quantifying Scope 3 emissions comply with the framework, that the practitioner can issue a clean report, but if they are not allowed under the framework or not appropriately applied, and the impact is material, then you'll get a modified report. So the practitioner may decide in those instances to highlight inherent limitations arising from these estimates in the assurance report. And that really also is another key element, is in a limited assurance engagement, you're getting a lot of narrative information in the assurance practitioner's report, and that will be different from what users and investors may be used to from the financial reporting side.
Fantastic. Yeah, thank you very much, Tom. Indeed, critical element is data and data availability, and we're hearing a lot that this is going to be a big concern for the companies. So, Roberta, now turning to you, will be great to hear from you. What do you see as the main challenges preparers face when determining which assurance option is best suited to their needs? Can you give us some insights of that?
Hi, Robert. First, thank you for having me here, and welcome to everyone. So the assurance of sustainability data is crucial, and it is what will be able to elevate sustainability reports to the same robustness level as financial data. So getting to your question, certainly dealing with the expectations of different stakeholders is one of the main challenges that a company face when choosing the type of sustainability disclosure assurance. So as Veronika mentioned, ISSB does not mandate assurance. The adoption of the assurance requirements is determined by each jurisdiction. So when we talk about Vale, that is headquartered in Brazil, we have mandatory reasonable assurance of sustainability disclosure for fiscal years beginning January 2026. So Brazil was the first country to embrace ISSB standards in October 2023. After that, many other countries followed suit. So this evolving regulatory landscape requires constant monitoring, especially by multinational companies. But beyond regulatory requirements, investors are also increasingly demanding higher levels of assurance. This trend may pressure companies to gradually broaden their assurance coverage or transition from limited to reasonable assurance as well. And when we talk about challenges, we cannot forget the costs associated to assurance. So reasonable assurance particularly is particularly expensive, especially for complex disclosures. And here it's worth noting that some companies will need to also allocate resources not only for the assurance process itself, but also to enhancing their internal control systems and automation to meet requirements for reasonable assurance.
Sorry, perfect. Thank you very much, Roberta. Yeah, that's very helpful. Yeah, you talk about challenges. Can you then share some practical tips on how companies can best prepare for the assurance of their sustainability disclosure?
Sure. So as I mentioned, it's important to evaluate the regulatory scenario and pressures from different stakeholders. This makes it possible to determine the type of assurance, limited or reasonable. Whenever possible, it's worth starting with limited assurance and then, if necessary, progress to reasonable assurance. And bringing to Vale's experience, we have been doing limited assurance since 2007, and now we are preparing for reasonable assurance. Vale decided to be an early adopter of the ISSB standard. So this means that in 2025, the company will present its first report referring to the fiscal year of 2024. With a gradual adoption of disclosures, starting with the requirements of IFRS S2, focused on climate, according to available reliefs. We started this journey with a comprehensive gap analysis to identify the necessary improvements for compliance with IFRS S1 and S2. And we are now actively addressing these identified gaps. Additionally, to ensure the reasonable assurance, we are concluding a pilot project in one of our units focused on GHG data to pinpoint gaps and develop action plans. And then these action plans will later be implemented across Vale's other operational units. So I guess the biggest tip here is to get started. Start small, but get started.
Great. Thank you very much, Roberta. Thank you very much, all the panelists, for your introductory comments. So just before we go to Q&A, I want to remind everyone that the slides will be sent to all participants after this webinar. You can always connect with us by emailing us at capacitybuilding@ifrs.org. Right, and now we go to the Q&A, and let's now take some questions from the audience. And I have a question to David. David, can you remind our audience about the options they have for assurance types and providers? For example, ISO 14064, ISAE 3410, and others, recognizing some companies may be worried about the costs.
Yeah, so I think you've mentioned the main choices. ISAE 3000 is the current standard from the IAASB. The majority of assurance that we find in the world uses that standard, but there is a competing standard, particularly for greenhouse gas verification, an ISO standard. And in jurisdictions where that's the majority of assurance that's being provided, we see that that's very prevalent. I mentioned earlier before, the majority of assurance that we find in 4 European countries in our study is done using IAASB standards and using consultants. And incidentally, France is probably the most evolved country in terms of the length of its disclosure, period of time that it's been disclosing, and the period of time that it's been assuring sustainability information. And in that jurisdiction, 100% of the information is assured. 100% of it that we find is done by accountants. And I think 93% of the time that the assurance provider for sustainability is the same as the financial statutory auditor. That practice is very different across Asia, where the majority of assurance is being done by consultants. I think there are some cost considerations. And I think the use of consultants for greenhouse gas verification does have some commercial history to it. I just made a comment about Asia, but let me switch back to the United States. So we've conducted this information for these reviews for the first time. We weren't finding much assurance by U.S. companies, and we were talking to stakeholders, and they were kind of questioning our methodology that didn't seem right. And when we changed our methodology to look at the CDP website or database, we found a lot more U.S. companies reporting sustainability, were getting assurance, and they're getting it on the greenhouse numbers. So it was not an investor-focused assurance practice. It was a practice that was trying to enhance their sustainability score on the CDP questionnaire. So I think that's a commercial motivation as opposed to an investor protection motivation. But that's all changing, right? Even in the US, more accountants are starting to do assurance. And I think Roberta's comments sort of signal what's happening in the marketplace, where the practice really is evolving, whether it's accountants or whether it's consultants. We know the future is clear in terms of the scope of assurance, and it's not going to be a simple metric verification situation the way it has been in the US or in a lot of Asian jurisdictions.
Perfect. Thank you, David. Maybe now a question to Tom. And also in relation to what David said. So ESA 5000 has been published. Does this mean that this applies to assurance engagements being conducted in financial year 24 reports? When will ISAE 3000 be retired?
So really good question, Robert, and I'll take it in different parts. So the effective date is for the financial year in 2026. So there's time to implement. Of course, early adoption and early use is permitted, and we expect that some jurisdictions may permit or require maybe in advance. So 3000 still is the effective standard for sustainability engagements, though 5000 is available for use now. We will not withdraw 3000. 3000, there's a lot of assurance that occurs outside the world of sustainability still. So 3000 will be the standard outside the world of sustainability. For sustainability matters, 3000 will apply. Now, there's an important point about 3410. 3410 is our greenhouse gas specific standard. That will be retired when 5000 becomes fully effective for 2026 years. See, we've incorporated the key elements of 3410 into our standard. So there's no need for a specific greenhouse gas standard. So 3000 will exist for all assurance matters outside of sustainability. Once 5000 becomes effective in 2026, and then 3410 will be sunset.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Tom, for this clarification. Now I want to turn to Roberta. Can you tell us a bit what specific skills or expertise should companies look for when selecting an assurance provider for the sustainability reporting? So that's about the companies, how they should upskill. Maybe then later also, David, you'll be able to tell us a bit more how the auditors should upskill and what they can do to upgrade their qualifications. But first with Roberta, what the companies themselves can do to enhance their expertise?
Yeah, here at Vale, we have the same auditing company that is looking for the financial data, the sustainability data that we disclose in our integrated report, and also for the new report that will be published in next year for the IFRS S2. So we look for skills related to sustainability data itself, because we know that some technical skills are important when we look at GHG emissions or water balance, for example. So we try to look at auditing companies that have a previous experience in auditing sustainability data. We think that it's important, but always trying to look to the synergies in the process. So here we were able to find a company that is able to perform the financial auditing, but also the sustainability auditing with different teams within the company. But this it's still able to bring synergies to the process.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you, Roberta. Now, so David, can you tell us a bit more how auditors can upskill? Can you recommend any certifications or trainings?
Yeah, so I think what's important to understand is that the way we've talked about sustainability assurance in this webinar indicates that it's not just verifying certain types of metrics, right? All of the assurance skills that you have as a financial auditor apply to sustainability assurance as well. So in terms of upskilling on ESG, the goal is not to turn every assurance provider or audit practitioner into a sustainability expert, but there is a need to upskill certain terminology, become familiar with ESG topics so they can work with the expert that might be on the engagement team, right? So there's an expert in sustainability assurance on the team for sustainability assurance engagement, and maybe there's 4 other auditors on that team who are not experts in sustainability, right? That's kind of the collaborative approach that works. So, that being said, what do you do as a professional accountant or as a professional auditor today? We have an obligation for lifelong learning as part of our continuing education. So, you could visit the IFRS Knowledge Hub. You could watch its webinar. You could do a lot of awareness raising and base stuff. I got my start in sustainability many years ago taking the FSA credential, the old SASB credential, which is still offered by the ISSB. It may or may not be, as broad scope as sustainability disclosure is today, but it's a fantastic way to become familiar with all the topics. And there are other certifications like that. Ultimately, professional accounting organizations around the world are the ones that, certify that an assurance provider, is licensed. And they are taking a lot of steps to create certifications, to provide training of their own. And that's a huge part of where the entire profession, new incoming professionals and existing assurance professionals, have to turn for help and upskilling.
Perfect. Thank you very much, David. Thank you very much for answering all these questions. Now, Veronika, coming back to you to bring up one more important aspect in technology. Can you tell us how the advancements in technology improve the quality and efficiency of non-financial reporting? And what should companies be mindful when integrating these technologies in their sustainability disclosures process?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for that question, Robert. Indeed, as part of the IFRS S1 and S2, we have developed the digital taxonomy, so something which is an important technological advancement and is supposed to assist users to read well and also to read through machine learning or through machine readability the outcome of the sustainability reports. It's indeed very helpful to have the digital tagging, and digital tagging will definitely assist the usage and the consumption, if I may say so, of the sustainability disclosures. It's important, though, to understand how this connects with the concepts of the information which you're collecting inside, and make sure also that whenever you're using this kind of technological advancement, this is pretty well connected with the internal control systems, and it's also visible, and it's also verifiable, and it's also an element of the reporting process. If you allow me, I'm going to go a little bit off your process, because I saw an important question in the chat, which I tried to answer, because there was something around materiality. And materiality is incredibly important in the whole process. Where do you start? What do you actually disclose? What's material information? So I want to point to everybody on the call that we just published our materiality guidance literally couple of days ago. So I'm sure that the staff will put the link in the chat, and for everyone who is interested to look into that document, it's a very practical thing about how to think, how to deal, and how to progress towards that process. So excuse me, Robert, for answering a question which you didn't ask.
No, perfect. Thank you for spotting this and coming back to do this question. Indeed, materiality is the key topic, and we're posting an important link about our recent insights into this topic. Yeah, thank you very much, Veronika, and to all panelists for insights, and thank you to everyone who participated today. Before we go, we'd like to remind you, listeners, about some key resources to help you stay ahead. The IFRS Foundation offers several programs to help you do this, such as our website and IFRS Sustainability Knowledge Hub have more than 260 resources from the IFRS and third-party partners. Secondly, the IFRS Sustainability Alliance, a membership program for education, tools, and peer networking. The Fundamentals of Sustainability Accounting Credential, or FSA, which instills the link between sustainability and financial performance. And finally, our website at ifrs.org, where you can sign up for alerts. Please remember that your use of resources and participation in our program also supports our mission as a nonprofit standard setter. Please stay involved with the IFRS Foundation, including through this webinar series. Follow our LinkedIn and news updates to learn about more in the series, covering the variety of topics, such as the transitions from the TCFD recommendation to ISSB standards. This webinar will happen on 5th of December. You can also listen to the ISSB monthly podcast to stay up to date. And before we wrap up, I would like to remind everyone to complete the survey at the end of the webinar. Your feedback is incredibly valuable and helps us improve future sessions. Thank you in advance. Thank you for taking the time to share your thoughts. I am Robert Swiatowski of the IFRS Foundation. On behalf of the team here, thank you for the participating. Until next time, thank you and goodbye.